Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're talking about immigration and the refugee crisis in Syria. It seems like we've been talking about Syria constantly for the last several years. This is just the latest development. And Doc, you'd asked me about what the president should or shouldn't do. You hear that
we've established that he has the authority. So in this case, should he go, well, hold on, we're going to really add an extra layer of protection for immigrants from Syria? Do you even think that he should do that?
Well, I don't know, because for all kinds of refugees, especially from Syria, the Syrian process, you hear reports of it taking at least 2 years before anybody is admitted into the country. They have to go through the UN first and be classified as a refugee. The big and through several layers of screening. There's been this comparison to how other folks have been getting into the country through visas and things like that, which is a completely different process altogether. The woman from her husband shoot up those folks in San Bernardino came in on a fiancé visa. And I think that you've seen a lot of pro-immigration people who have been saying for a long time, listen, the visa process really needs some tightening up, because the folks are able to come in and overstay the visa, and then we lose track of them. And there are things and there are security issues legitimate security concerns you can have with that, but that's wholly separate. That's a wholly separate question from whether or not we should accept refugees. And I wonder why, when there's a legitimate immigration loophole or a legitimate immigration concern that involves visas and residency status in this country, why the Republicans are so concerned with families of women and children fleeing the very violence that we're seeking to protect ourselves from. You have the wolves chasing these folks down, and then they get to the gates of America, and those gates are shut, or the gates of Western Europe, and those and so you hear lots of horrible things that happen to people that can't flee, and so if we want to have I'm stumbling all over the place. We want to have a critical conversation about immigration. Visas and those types of things are ripe for the discussion, but this refugee canard, I don't know.
So here's part of the thing that we're at least from my perspective, already has an air base over in Iraq close to this operating theater, and that's where they're launching a lot of their bombings from. They also have an air base that they're using from Syria. The problem is the air base that they have in Iraq is a former air base we used to have, gave over to the Iraqi government. The Iraqi government says, here's this nice American base for you. A lot of the places that they've taken over, or that ISIL has taken over in Iraq, are places where we used to have equipment and everything else. And it does appear that they have not only a printing machine for American money, but they also have a passport and several thousand blank passports, American passports. So for me, if this information is true, and I don't have a reason to disbelieve it, don't you think that we really need to put a stop on, well, hold on. If you're from that area, we can't have you in. Don't you think that would be a safety consideration?
Sure.
All right. And now
it doesn't change what I said at all. It doesn't change any of that, what I just said about the process, about families coming through, about any of it. It really doesn't. Sure, we should look and have appropriate security measures. I don't think anybody's arguing that. It's the idea that, once again, the Republican Party and the Republican presidential candidates trying to undercut and trying to sell short an American system that is doing a fairly lengthy job. I don't know if it's good enough. I'm not a refugee expert. Right. I'm just saying that I don't think that they know either, and I think they're using it for political points, which is to be expected in a presidential campaign.
All right. Well, now I didn't really want to bring the political end of this in. The truth is it's politics, and of course, I agree with Lefty that a lot of the people that are out there complaining about this process really are trying to score political points. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to propose the same question to you that I did to Katie yesterday. What happens if let's say you let in, apparently there's going to be 2,000 refugees coming in, or I can't remember the number. Let's say we let in 1 million. All right. Now, we're not going to, but this, for the sake of argument, let's say we let in 1 million, and one of them is an ISIS plant that goes on a shooting rampage like over in France, and or bombs a plane like they did in Egypt. Who's responsible for that? Who pays the price for that? And if you could simply put a halt and revamp the way we are letting these people in from that area to double and triple check, if we don't at least do that, who's going to be responsible for that?
The guy that did the killing. Who's going to be, if we're going to put it on the president, if we're going to put it on the government, who's responsible for the 50 kids that die waiting to get in this country? Who's responsible for their lives? It's the same thing. We cannot guarantee 100% perfect safety. We can't guarantee 100% perfect security. That's just impossible. And we all know that. I'm not making an argument that you're going to disagree with, but to say in this chance that we have somebody come in, we're going to deny everybody and wipe our hands clean of a situation that we helped to create. Let's not forget that. We helped to create this by our interventions, and I'm not blaming this on Obama. I'm not blaming this on Bush. You can blame American foreign policy going back decades in our interventions in the Middle East.
And I agree.
That helped to keep this region in a state of constant destabilization and flux. But if we're going to say that we should disengage entirely with helping to mop up the fallout, which is refugees, and helping to rebuild the things that we've helped to break, well, then we should disengage everything. We should pull out militarily. We should end our allegiances with Israel and Saudi Arabia and Jordan, everybody, because we're just not willing to invest the political and moral capital in that region anymore. I mean, that's not an advocacy. That's not a point that I'm advocating necessarily. I think that we need to rethink our military policy in the region. But I mean, if we're going to bury our heads in the sand, we might as well bury all of our head in the sand and not just the forehead.
Okay. Well, and the one thing I'm going to point out here is Angela Merkel's democracy. She gets up there, berates the rest of the European Union, say, "Oh, you guys got to take everything in. You guys got to do this. You guys got to do that. We're doing our part." And all she has done since that period of time is restrict the number of refugees. And the problem is when she first said that, it gave hope to millions of these refugees. And now, because of that statement, that is irresponsible, in my opinion, millions of these people are at risk. Thousands are dying in on the land journey and the sea journey. And they're overrunning these small countries that simply cannot afford it, cannot cope with it, and has created yet more humanitarian crisis. I'm going to finish this segment by quoting LBJ, "We should not be over there doing for Syrian boys what they can do themselves." That's a paraphrase. And he was talking about Vietnam, of course, but we shouldn't be over there fighting a war for somebody else. And I believe that that's what's going on. We are now in a proxy war, clearly, with Russia over in Syria. Well, thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We're going to be back right after this break. What are we going to talk about? Are we going to talk about the governor, or are we going to talk about the other thing?
Yeah, let's talk about the other thing. Let's save Uncle Terry for the end.
All right, we're going to be talking about the other thing. Don't have my glasses, so I can't see.
The mayor of North Carolina.
Oh, the mayor of North Carolina. That is awesome. We'll be back right after this break. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.